All right, first things first, it's our first show back, so we've got to talk about the 2023 box office, some of the biggest films, some of the flops. We're going to get into a little bit of both of those. Looking at last year here, number one, Barbie. Barbie had a huge thing recently come out where Ryan Gosling was nominated and some of the other ones weren't, but some other ones were, but you don't really hear about that part because it doesn't fit the narrative. So, that's a messy thing, but you know what? They were the number one film last year. My wife, my daughter have seen it. I've known other people have seen it. I hadn't seen it yet. Sorry. But, heard it was pretty good. Heard most people may enjoy it, but you know what? Not for me. That's okay. Number two, Super Mario Brothers. Both of these did over $1 billion, which is excellent and really moves the conversation away from the COVID conversation where some of the studios are saying we can't do numbers like we used to because of COVID, because of ever since COVID, our numbers have been down. And that's just simply not true. You can look at the Spider-Man movie that came out, was it last year or year before? It was huge. It was huge. And it was, I think, the first huge movie to come out since the COVID. And that was always kind of the litmus test. Like, hey, look, if they can do it, anybody else can do it. But Barbie did over $1 billion. Super Mario Brothers did over $1 billion, excuse me. Oppenheimer was at number 3 with 955 million. It'll hit $1 billion, right? Hopefully. All right. Guardians of the Galaxy, 845 million. Fast X typically does, and as you see here, it does have a bigger foreign number than it does domestic. A lot of these do in general, but they love those fast movies overseas. It blows up over there. So I know a lot of us get kind of tired of Fast and the Furious movies over here. Not everybody, and I know there's an audience for it, but as you can see overseas, I mean, they eat it up. That's why they keep making them. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was number 6 at 690 million. The Little Mermaid remake, the live action remake, I guess you call that a remake or a retelling, I don't know, 569 million. Mission Impossible, Wonka, Elemental, that rounds out your top 10. So everything pretty close to 500 million or more, with Barbie and Super Mario Brothers doing over $1 billion. So it was a pretty good year at the box office for some of these folks. We're going to talk about some of the biggest bombs from last year that were not super successful. They may have had some decent numbers at the box office, but you got to remember that when it comes to these films, they have their own budget to make the film, right? And then they have a marketing budget, which for some, I've heard it's double the budget of the film itself. For some, I think it's probably only maybe 50% of that, depending on how big the budget is. Some of these we're going to get into $300 million movies. I can't imagine that they're spending $300 million on advertising. Probably 150, trying to get their money back. And some of them did, and some of them didn't. So let's take a look at some of those now. All right, so first up, we've got Indiana Jones, Disney's Indiana Jones, of course. And we know how everything's been going with Disney lately. They had a budget of around $300 million plus their marketing costs. Again, don't really know what that was. Worldwide box office of 384 million, or a little under that, I guess. Estimated loss of around $100 million. This is just one example of what's been going on with Disney lately. They're having a hard time making movies that are making a profit. We've seen this over and over again, not just with Indiana Jones, but a lot of our other favorites like Star Wars, and even now with like Pixar that they've purchased and some of these other brands. So we'll see what they do over the course of the year. They're not doing very well. We may get into that a little bit later on too, but Disney's not shaping up to be the A-game player that they used to be. All right, next up we got Blue Beetle. Now, Blue Beetle was the first DC, I guess it's EU now they're calling it. It's the first film that James Gunn had anything to do with for his new DC universe. It did not fare too well. We'll get into some of the dying out films that were also part of the DC here in just a second. But as far as this one goes, this is Blue Beetle. They needed it to be a big hit. $104 million budget isn't the biggest in the world. So that plus their marketing with less than 131 million worldwide, you wouldn't think they'd have a lot of a loss, but according to what I've been able to find online, looks like around 139 million. So this is Warner Brothers, DC, and again, This is James Gunn hitting the ground running with his film, and not the best start to it. And I wish him well, and I hope he does well. But based off the rumors and everything I'm hearing about these other films that he's coming out with, or this universe he's building, a little skeptical. We'll get into that a little bit more later, but a little skeptical, a little worried. We'll see what happens. Shazam! Fury of the Gods is one of those other DC movies that's one of the last ones before James Gunn took over, and there wasn't a lot of incentive to go out and see it because they knew he wasn't returning. Black Adam's not returning. Henry Cavill's not returning. So I don't want to say this was a dying brand, but they really didn't put anything behind these films to really make them more successful. Now, I feel bad about this one because the director of this film is David F. Sandberg, and I'm a big fan of his because he started out, like me, just an independent, low-budget filmmaker guy. He was making little short films in his home with his girlfriend or wife, and then he ended up making Lights Out, which went viral on YouTube, and then they turned that into a movie. Then he did Annabelle Creation. He did several other movies, including Shazam and Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I generally enjoy Shazam. We'll get into that in a minute. But, I feel bad for him. $125 million plus marketing, worldwide box office. They did around $134 million, which once you figure in that marketing, they lost about $150 million. But again, I can't blame David on that. It seems like such a great guy. He really is a talented dude. I just don't think the studio got behind it like they should have. And there was probably some other things in the edit that they took out because there was no need for it because they weren't moving forward with Shazam, which is sad. I thought Zachary Levi and the whole cast did a really, really good job. All right, next up, we got The Flash. This was supposed to be a huge film. Michael Keaton is back in the house as Batman. I grew up with Michael Keaton as Batman. I know a lot of you guys did too. Loved that movie. Had a Batman birthday party when I was a kid. I remember getting the puzzle for Batman Returns, and I was all about it. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. However, this wasn't enough to help The Flash. I think Ezra Miller basically by himself could have destroyed this movie, but the fact that it just wasn't that good didn't help out in general. So we're looking at a budget of around $300 million plus marketing, worldwide box office around $271 million. And according to the numbers I found, that's over or around $100 million estimated loss. And this is another one of those dying out DC films. But, James Gunn says it's one of the best ones he's ever seen. And for it to perform like this, I don't know how that speaks to the film. I don't know how that speaks to the DC universe coming up. And I don't know how that speaks to James Gunn's taste overall. I guess we'll find out soon. Now, I don't know how serious this film was supposed to be taking. If it was a serious film, it was more comedic, but it just didn't do great. But it was Nicolas Cage, and everybody loves Nicolas Cage, I think, whether you love him as an incredible actor or just a sight to see because he's so out there and outlandish in his performances. I don't know. I saw the previews for it, didn't think it looked amazing, and apparently not a lot of other people did either. So we're looking at a budget $65 million plus marketing, worldwide box office less than $27 million. Estimated loss around $100 million. Really just not an overall successful film. Maybe it'll pick up some successes in streaming or home releases if they still do that or whatever. And sorry, Nick. All right, last up is a film that was supposed to be everybody's favorite film of the year. The Marvels had a budget of $275 million plus marketing. Question that, as many reshoots and everything that they did. I've heard from other folks like Ryan Kennel, Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, and a lot of others that they think that number is probably not accurate. They probably spent upwards of $300 million, but we'll go with what they put out there and what's available for us. So looking at a $275 million budget plus marketing, worldwide box office around $206 million, estimated loss of over $200 million. This was a huge flop for Disney Marvel. And, after the first film, Captain Marvel, which she, got replaced in her sequel, and title changed and everything. But in her first film, it was a $1 billion flick. But you also got to remember that it was wedged between two of the biggest Marvel movies that had come out ever, including the biggest that had ever come out, for sure, Endgame. And they made it as you've got to watch this film to know what's going on. We've got these characters in here. It's going to be pivotal to Endgame. And she's barely on screen at all in Endgame. In fact, the theater I went to see Endgame, everyone cringed and either just booed or made some terrible noises when she got on screen. And she was not a crowd favorite. And I think a lot of that was the letdown of what Captain Marvel was. So I think Disney Marvel was really shocked and disappointed to see that it didn't do as good as the first one did. But if they would have listened to the audience, right, they probably would have had an idea. Let's wrap this up with a couple of films that I did see this past year. I'll share with you guys. Super Mario Brothers, the movie. Now, I saw this in theaters with my wife and my daughter, and my wife's familiar enough with it, but my daughter's familiar enough with it. But my wife, me and her, man, we grew up on Super Mario Brothers. I still have the original Nintendo. We got the Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Wii, Switch, Nintendo family. Love Nintendo. We got PlayStations and stuff too, but Nintendo will always have a special place in my heart. I remember playing the original on the big tube TV at grandma's house and having to flip it to channel 3 so you could play it and everything. It was wonderful. Very, very nostalgic. And this movie was great because it had a lot of that nostalgia thrown in there with a lot of today's humor. Chris Pratt did a pretty good job. I have my comments about actors trying to be voice actors. Sometimes it works, and sometimes I wish they would just go ahead and hire a voice actor. I mean, that's their specialty, and I much prefer a voice actor that's focused on that performance, using the voice more than everything else. But you know what? Chris Pratt did a great job. Everybody else involved did a great job. Jack Black's phenomenal. Not only that, but the Peaches song. I mean, come on. Peaches song, can't beat that. But Super Mario Brothers, like I said, saw it in theaters, loved it, absolutely loved it. IMDb's got a 7 out of 10. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Solid performance. We'll see it again now that it's on streaming. We've already watched it at least once, but we'll probably watch it some more after that. The other movie that I saw this year, this is my wife's favorite movie, is the original Little Mermaid. So I took her to go see this. I still haven't told her my opinion of it because I didn't want to spoil or ruin or rain on her parade or anything like that. But I just was not a big fan of it. You know, I don't know what it was. And it wasn't just that they race changed Ariel. No, it wasn't. It wasn't just that. It was so much more. And the biggest thing I think that let me down, aside from the terrible music numbers that were new songs and not having any of the great stuff in there I remember as a child, because I enjoyed The Little Mermaid as a child. Awkwafina's voice just, and Javier Bardem. I love Javier Bardem. It just seemed like he phoned this one in. Did not enjoy his performance at all. It was pretty much a letdown for me. I know a lot of people enjoyed it. I mean, 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb. I've got to give it a 2 out of 10. And a lot of that is because it is a live action remake of a classic, beloved Disney cartoon. First of all, you've got to win me over that it's a good remake. When you're remaking anything, then you're going from cartoon, classic, beloved, to a live action. You got to step it up. And in this one, they didn't do that. And I think that's fair. I think a lot of people would agree with me, but we'll see. I don't know. 2 out of 10. Sorry. Next one I saw was The Flash. Now, I did not see this in theaters. I saw it at home just because I could. And I said, I got to, because my boy Michael Keaton's back in there. But I saw a lot of, I don't want to say plot holes, but just stuff that didn't make sense to me. Did not care for the Superwoman or Supergirl character that was in there. It just seemed weird. And I know for like 2 or 3 years that they were talking about this movie. A lot of people were commenting on the super suit that she was wearing. And yeah, it wasn't flattering at all. The colors kind of bled together and didn't look really interesting to me at all. And I didn't like what they did to my boy Michael Keaton. They turned him into something that I disagreed with. I didn't think that Bruce Wayne or Batman that I grew up with would be that kind of a grumpy old man. And that kind of breaks my heart. It reminds me of what they did to Luke Skywalker, actually, for Star Wars. That's not Luke. This isn't Bruce Wayne. Not the ones I grew up with anyway. So sorry, I got to give this a 3 out of 10. Another one I saw, and just saw this not too long ago, me and the wife. We saw the original Nun. Love all the Conjuring, Insidious movies that all run together. We'll get to Insidious in a minute. Excuse me. But The Nun 2, saw it. I thought it was really good. Could it have been better? Sure. But was it well shot? Was there a good story? Were the scares there? Yes, I enjoyed it all. No real complaints about it. Do feel like it kind of missed the mark in some places. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I think that's fair. I don't think it was the greatest thing I've ever seen, but it was a 6 out of 10. Pretty fair. I would recommend it for sure. I'd recommend it. Following that up is The Insidious, The Red Door. I mean, Insidious, The Red Door was a great follow-up to the Insidious films. You know, at first I didn't know how to take it. It seemed like there was some virtue signaling in there. You know, the female friend that came along just happened to kind of boss, you know, his son around a little bit, know a little bit more, and be a little bit more in tune to things. But it was great to see the kids growing up and dealing with it. And overall, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to complain. Another 6 out of 10, I think. 6 out of 10, I think, is fair on that one. But I would recommend it. It was a great film, especially if you like the Insidious universe, Conjuring universe. It's not on here, but a film we just watched the other night by James Wan is Malignant. And yeah, I can't recommend that one. Can't do it. If you've seen Malignant, you know what I'm talking about. If you hadn't seen Malignant, James kind of let me down on that one. It seemed like a low budget horror flick from the 70s that had these weird kind of twists or concepts. And then somebody gave them, you know, 10, 15, 20, $50 million or whatever to make it. And it turned into Malignant. So not a huge fan of that one. Insidious Red Door, go out and see it if you hadn't already. Pretty good. Evil Dead Rise. I have a poster in my room of The Evil Dead. The Evil Dead was a great lower budget movie and loved it so much. Evil Dead Rise, I thought it was really, really good. My wife is freaked out by some of the voices when they get down low and everything, and it's a female voice especially. So, yeah, that was a win for us. I think 7 out of 10. All the scares were in the right place. Pops were there. And yeah, got the message across. I thoroughly enjoyed Evil Dead Rise. Let's see. Here we go. So I said earlier that I felt bad about this one. I do believe it was a good movie. I thought it was great. Excuse me. I thought it was great. For the most part, I'd give it a 7 out of 10, just like Evil Dead Rise. I thought it was more than just entertaining. And to be fair, I just recently saw it, as well as just recently saw Shazam. I hadn't seen Shazam before. So it was out on streaming. I watched it. Shazam Fury of the Gods was out. I watched it, and I enjoyed both of them very, very much. I think the worst part, of course, was Snow White making an appearance in there. She didn't do a terrible job, but I just can't. How about that? I just can't. Rachel Zegler, I'm sorry. I just can't. All right. But yeah, Shazam 7 out of 10. Thought it was really good. And I'm being pretty gracious with these scores, but I'm easy to please. I don't see a whole lot of movies on a regular basis. If you follow me or keep up with me, you know I'm a filmmaker, super low budget filmmaker, indie filmmaker. Really have a good time doing all of that. Hoping to make feature films one day, maybe like David F. Sandberg does here. But I don't watch a whole lot. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't watch a lot of movies like I should. I'm trying to get back into that a little bit more. It is something I absolutely enjoy doing, but I just don't seem to have the time a lot of times. I'm usually I'm busy. What can I say? 7 out of 10 there. I enjoyed it. I know others didn't, but whatever. All right, another one I just recently watched with the wife was The Pope's Exorcist. Thought it was really, really good. The CGI could have used a little bit of improvement on that. Russell Crowe did fine. Everybody else in the movie did fine. The concept was really cool, and I don't want to spoil it or give it away, but reading it here, follow Gabriel Amorth, I guess, the Vatican's lead exorcist, as he investigates the possession of a child and uncovers a conspiracy the Vatican has tried to keep secret. And I guess that's really the thing, the secret of what it was that the Vatican was keeping tucked away from everybody. That was really cool. The concept behind it, aside from being a filmmaker, I am a Christian, and I do believe in the Bible, and I believe in the stories. And one of the coolest things, and in fact, it's in my latest film, I put this line from Revelation in there where it talks about God kicking the Satan and the angels out of heaven, the fallen angels. You've heard of that before. Out of heaven and onto earth, not to hell, but to earth. And so that plays a little bit of a role here. And man, I just thought it was really cool. I thought it was really cool the way they addressed that without getting, overly preachy or anything like that. It's a really good movie. Speaking of a horror Christian film, if you're into those kind of things, Nefarious was really, really good. And I don't know, we watched it on Prime, I want to say, but it's on other streaming platforms. But Nefarious, great film. Sorry, 7 out of 10. I don't know if I said that yet. 7 out of 10. Next up was The Machine. Saw the stand up with Bert Kreischer and thought it was very, very funny. But there's a lot of issues with Bert Kreischer and his comedy and jokes and what people think. I tend to enjoy him. I don't tend to have a problem with him. The movie was pretty good in parts, and other parts just kind of fell a little short for me too. I feel like there was a lot of studio pressure and involvement to do certain things. I thought that Luke Skywalker being in there, I thought he was great. I thought it was great to see him. And he did a good job in the film. But yeah, not my favorite movie of the year. I give it a 5 out of 10. I enjoyed it, but not so much that I would, watch it 2 or 3 or 4 more times or anything like that. But pretty good movie overall. No big complaints about it. Just wasn't for me, all in all. And last up, Cocaine Bear. Best movie I saw all year. I'm not even kidding. If you like to laugh and you've got a sick, twisted sense of humor, this movie is great. And I almost hate to give it a 9 out of 10, but I'm going to give it a boom. 9 out of 10. And I say I almost hate to do that because this is an Elizabeth Banks movie. And if you know anything about Elizabeth Banks, she's pretty much a turd. She called Steven Spielberg sexist for not making a female or a movie with a female lead in it, even though he had. She called him out at an award show, I want to say, when she did that, and made herself look incredibly stupid. And she said a lot of feminist stuff, and she never did anything with this movie. So I don't even care. I don't even think she cared about it. I never heard her say anything about it, get behind it, push it, or anything like that. But I did hear her talk about Charlie's Angels and feminism and beating up the patriarchy and all this and that. Whatever. Cocaine Bear, again, almost hate to give her the prompts, but it's definitely a fun watch. It is vulgar, it's stupid, but hey, you know what? It's got Ray Liotta in it. If it's not his last film, it was one of his last films. I love Ray Liotta. Huge fan of Goodfellas. Again, got that poster too. But Cocaine Bear, great film. Go check it out. And that's gonna do it for this this box office recap.
Hey guys, thanks for checking out this clip from the Morning Mayhem. Remember, this is just a portion of the full show that comes out every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. If you hadn't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the full shows or these tasty little nuggets.